November 20th, 1943. Dawn breaks over Betio Island. 291 acres of coral and sand in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. 18,000 United States Marines are about to assault this tiny island. The Japanese have fortified it beyond anything Marines have encountered. 500 concrete bunkers, 40 artillery pieces, 14 coastal defense guns, 4,500 defenders with orders to fight to the death. The Marines don't know the worst part yet, the tide. Naval intelligence predicted high tide at dawn. They were wrong. The water is 3 feet too shallow. Landing craft will ground on the coral reef 700 yards offshore. 700 yards. Marines will have to wade through chest-deep water, exposed, no cover. Japanese machine guns zeroed on the approaches. What happens next will become the bloodiest 76 hours in Marine Corps history. 1,009 Marines will die, most in the first 24 hours, most before reaching the beach. This is Tarawa. This is Pacific hell. This is what happens when everything goes wrong and Marines have to win anyway. Tarawa Atoll sits in the Gilbert Islands, strategic location. Japanese had held it since 1941, built it into a fortress. Admiral Shibasaki Keiji commanded the defense. He boasted that 1 million Americans could not take Tarawa in 100 years. His confidence was based on concrete, literally. The Japanese had spent a year fortifying Betio, the main island. They brought in concrete, steel, heavy weapons, built bunkers that could withstand naval bombardment, positioned guns to create interlocking fields of fire, created defenses designed to destroy any amphibious assault. The island was tiny but formidable. Every yard was fortified. Every approach was covered by fire. Every position was mutually supporting. The Japanese weren't planning to evacuate, weren't planning to retreat, were planning to kill as many Americans as possible before dying themselves. They succeeded beyond what anyone imagined. The American plan seemed sound. 3 days of naval bombardment, carrier airstrikes, destroy the defenses, land Marines, secure the island, move to next objective. Simple. Except the Japanese bunkers were built to survive bombardment. Concrete walls 3 feet thick, steel reinforced, coconut logs stacked for additional protection. The naval bombardment looked devastating, was devastating to unprotected areas, barely scratched the bunkers. Japanese defenders weathered the storm in their fortifications. When the bombardment lifted, they emerged, manned their weapons, waited for the Marines. The Americans didn't know their bombardment had failed, thought the defenses were destroyed, thought landing would be relatively unopposed. They were catastrophically wrong. The tide miscalculation changed everything. High tide at dawn meant landing craft could cross the reef, could beach on the island. Marines could disembark close to shore. Low tide meant disaster. Landing craft grounded on the reef. Ramps dropped into deep water. Marines climbed out, weighted down with 70 pounds of equipment, started wading 700 yards to the beach. That's 7 football fields, through chest-deep water, moving slowly, completely exposed. Japanese gunners couldn't believe their luck. Americans wading toward them in perfect target areas, hundreds of them, nowhere to hide, nowhere to take cover, just walk forward and die. The machine guns opened fire, then the artillery, then everything. The water turned red, bodies floated, Marines kept coming. What else could they do? Turn back? Drown? Hide? None of those were options. Forward was the only choice. Forward through the fire. Forward through the death. Forward because Marines don't quit. The first waves were slaughtered. 70% casualties. 70%. That means 7 out of 10 Marines who hit the beach in the first hour were killed or wounded. The survivors couldn't advance, pinned against a coconut log seawall. Japanese bunkers 30 yards away, firing down on them. Marines returned fire, couldn't see targets, just fired at bunker slits, called for more troops, more ammunition, more support. But getting support required crossing the same killing zone they'd just crossed, required more Marines to wade through the same fire. The second wave tried. More casualties. Third wave. More casualties. By noon, 3 waves had landed. All were pinned on the beach. Commanders offshore were receiving reports of disaster, confusion about what was happening, about whether the attack could continue, about whether to call it off. Colonel David Shoup refused to quit. He was on the beach, wounded, bleeding, commanding, determined to hold, determined to win, determined not to let his Marines die for nothing. The fighting on that first day defied description. Marines huddled behind the seawall. Japanese bunkers fired down on them. Mortars rained from inland positions. Artillery from the opposite end of the island. Marines couldn't go forward, couldn't go back, just survive, hold, wait for support. Some Marines tried flanking bunkers, rushed positions. Most died, few succeeded. Destroyed individual bunkers with grenades and flamethrowers, created tiny gaps in Japanese defenses. Other Marines pushed through, expanded the gaps slightly. Progress measured in yards, in feet, in inches. Every yard cost blood, every position cost lives, but progress nonetheless. Tiny, inadequate, but proof that advance was possible, that Japanese defenses could be penetrated, that courage could overcome firepower, that Marines could win, would win. The only question was cost. November 21, dawn, day 2. The Marines have a toehold, barely. A few hundred yards of beach. Thousands of Marines crammed into tiny perimeter. Still under fire. Still taking casualties. Still fighting desperately. But they're ashore. That matters. Now the question is whether they can expand, whether they can push inland, whether they can break Japanese defenses. The answer comes through relentless, grinding combat. No dramatic breakthroughs, no clever maneuvers, just sustained pressure. Attack bunkers, destroy them. Move to next bunker. Repeat. All day, all night, into the next day. Marines died by hundreds. Japanese died by thousands. But the perimeter expanded, slowly, painfully, inevitably. The bunker fighting was horrific. Each position had to be assaulted individually. Standard procedure developed. Suppress the bunker with rifle and machine gun fire. Covering fire to keep Japanese heads down. Flamethrower team approaches. Shoots flame into firing slits. Burns everyone inside. Demolition team follows. Places explosives. Destroys bunker. Move to next position. Repeat. This worked. Slowly. Each bunker took time, took ammunition, took casualties. But they fell, one by one. The Japanese couldn't stop this, couldn't reinforce fast enough, couldn't coordinate defenses. Marines were inside their perimeter. Close combat negated Japanese artillery advantage, negated prepared positions, made it infantry versus infantry. Americans had more infantry, had more supplies, had more support. Japan had courage and determination. That wasn't enough. Not against sustained American pressure. The logistics were a nightmare. Everything had to come across the reef, still under fire. Marines waiting supplies ashore, ammunition, water, medical supplies, food, everything. The reef crossing remained deadly through day 2. Snipers picked off supply carriers. Artillery targeted obvious routes. Mortars hit the beach. Marines kept coming, kept carrying supplies, kept dying. But the supplies got through. Enough of them. Enough to keep fighting. Enough to sustain operations. Enough to make victory possible. The Japanese had plenty of ammunition, had prepared positions, had defensive advantages, but they couldn't resupply, couldn't reinforce, couldn't evacuate wounded, couldn't do anything except fight where they were. That static defense was doomed against mobile assault. Just question of time, question of cost. Day 2 brought armor. Tanks had tried landing day 1, got stuck on the reef. Engineers worked overnight, cleared routes, built ramps, got tanks across. Now Sherman tanks rolled onto Betio. Japanese had anti-tank weapons, destroyed several tanks, but not all. Surviving tanks provided crucial support. Tank guns could destroy bunkers, could suppress positions, could protect advancing infantry. Marines used tanks as moving cover, advanced behind them, used tank fire to suppress bunkers while infantry flanked. This combined arms approach worked better than pure infantry assault. Still costly, still deadly, but more effective. Expanded the perimeter faster, created momentum. The Japanese could see they were losing, could see Marines advancing, could see their defenses crumbling. They fought harder, fought with desperation, knew they would die, wanted to take Americans with them, succeeded too often, but couldn't stop the inevitable. The heat was crushing. November in the tropics, humid, temperatures over 90 degrees. Marines in full combat gear, no shade, no rest, fighting continuously. Dehydration was epidemic. Heat casualties almost as common as combat casualties. Water was scarce, had to be brought from ships, rationed carefully. Marines drank when they could, fought when they had to, suffered constantly. The Japanese suffered worse, no resupply at all, drinking rainwater, eating stored food, running out of everything, but still fighting, still defending, still killing Marines. Their determination was remarkable, their skill was evident, their courage was undeniable. They were also doomed. You can't win with courage alone. Need supplies, need reinforcements, need support. The Japanese had none of those, had only determination to die fighting. They accomplished that, almost to the last man. The casualties mounted horrifically. By end of day 2, over 1,500 Marines were casualties, killed or wounded. 1,500 out of 18,000. That's nearly 10% casualties in 48 hours. Japanese losses were worse. Thousands dead, defenses collapsing, perimeter shrinking, but still fighting, still inflicting casualties, still making every yard cost. The Marines couldn't afford these losses, couldn't sustain this casualty rate, but couldn't stop either. Stopping meant Japanese reinforced, meant starting over, meant wasting lives already sacrificed. Had to continue, had to push, had to win, despite the cost, despite the casualties, despite the horror. Forward, always forward, because that's what Marines do. They advance, they take objectives, they win, whatever it costs. The medical situation was desperate. Wounded Marines on the beach, corpsmen treating them under fire, limited supplies, no proper facilities, trying to save lives while fighting. Some wounded were evacuated, taken back across the reef, loaded on ships, given proper treatment. Many died waiting. Many died during evacuation. Many died after reaching ships. The wounds were horrific. Machine gun fire at close range, artillery fragments, burns from flamethrowers, trauma from explosions. Corpsmen did what they could, saved many, lost many, worked until exhausted, then kept working, because Marines needed them, because stopping meant Marines died. So they didn't stop, kept treating, kept saving, kept trying. That dedication saved hundreds, maybe thousands, not enough to save everyone, never enough for that, but enough to matter, enough to make a difference, enough to honor the wounded by fighting for their survival. Night fighting was terrifying. Japanese infiltration tactics, small groups sneaking into Marine positions, trying to kill sleeping Marines, trying to sabotage equipment, trying to create confusion. Marines established security, sentries every few yards, tripwires, flares, anything to detect infiltrators. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes infiltrators got through. Marines awoke to find Japanese in their positions. Close combat in darkness. Knives, pistols, bayonets. Brutal, personal, terrifying. Dawn would reveal bodies. Japanese infiltrators dead. Marines dead. Mixed together. Evidence of night's violence. Evidence of fighting that happened in darkness. Fighting that survivors would remember forever. Fighting that gave nightmares for decades. That was Tarawa Nights. That was the terror. That was what made simple survival feel like victory. November 22, Day 3. Japanese resistance is collapsing. Not broken, not surrendering, but collapsing. Marines control most of the island. Japanese hold the eastern end. Hundreds of them, concentrated, desperate, determined to die fighting. Marines have to dig them out, bunker by bunker, position by position. Same grinding combat, same horrific casualties, but end is visible. Victory is certain. Just question of time, just question of final cost. The Marines push, Japanese resist. Both sides know how this ends. Only question is how many more die before it's over. The final Japanese positions were the strongest. Reinforced bunkers, concentrated firepower, determined defenders. Marines assaulted anyway. Used everything available. Tanks, artillery, naval gunfire, airstrikes, infantry assault. Coordination wasn't perfect, was adequate. Positions fell, slowly. Japanese retreated into fewer positions, concentrated their survivors, made final stands. Marines respected their courage, killed them anyway. That's war. Respect doesn't prevent combat, doesn't save enemies, just means you acknowledge their bravery while destroying them. The Japanese at Tarawa were brave, were skilled, were determined. They died, almost all of them, because courage isn't enough, because being skilled doesn't overcome being outnumbered, because determination can't defeat superior resources. The last major engagement came at the island's eastern tip. Several hundred Japanese concentrated there. Built last stand position. Marines couldn't bypass, had to destroy. Prepared massive assault, every available weapon, bombardment from ships, airstrikes, tank guns, artillery, infantry assault, coordinated attack, overwhelming force. Japanese couldn't withstand it. Position fell, defenders died, few surrendered. Most fought until killed. Their choice, their honor code demanded it. Marines understood. Didn't change outcome, just meant more Japanese dead, more Marines killed taking the position, more casualties when the war was already decided. But nobody could stop fighting. Not Japanese bound by honor, not Marines committed to victory. So fighting continued until one side ceased to exist. That's what happened. Japanese at Tarawa ceased to exist. Almost 4,500 dead, 17 captured, out of 4,517. That's annihilation. That's what Tarawa cost the Japanese. Everything. November 23rd, noon, 76 hours after landing. An American flag rises over Betio Island. Tarawa is secured. The cost is staggering. 1,009 Marines killed, 2,100 wounded, over 3,000 casualties out of 18,000. That's 17%. Nearly 1 in 5 Marines who landed became casualties. The Japanese lost everyone. 4,500 dead, 17 prisoners. Total defensive defeat. The numbers don't convey the horror, don't convey the fighting, don't convey the courage required, don't convey the determination, don't convey the cost. Numbers are just numbers. The reality was hell, was 76 hours of continuous combat, was Marines dying by hundreds, was Japanese fighting until annihilated, was battlefield covered in bodies, was coral stained red, was horror beyond description. That was Tarawa. That was Pacific hell. That was the price of 291 acres. The aftermath revealed the scope of destruction. Bodies everywhere. Marines, Japanese, mixed together, decomposing in tropical heat. The smell was overwhelming. Cleanup took weeks. Buried the dead, cleared wreckage, salvaged equipment, made the island habitable, or tried to. The smell never quite left. The memories never left either. Marines who fought there carried Tarawa forever, carried images of friends dying, carried sounds of combat, carried feeling of helplessness as machine guns cut down comrades, carried guilt of survival when so many died, carried trauma that would manifest for decades. That was Tarawa's final cost, not just the dead, the wounded physically, the wounded psychologically, the survivors who weren't whole, who couldn't be whole after experiencing hell. That cost doesn't appear in casualty statistics, but it was real, was permanent, was part of Tarawa's price. Colonel David Shoup received the Medal of Honor for leadership on the beach, for refusing to quit, for inspiring Marines, for turning near disaster into victory. He deserved it. So did hundreds of others, most dead. Medals don't bring them back, don't undo their sacrifice. Just recognize it, acknowledge it, honor it. That's something. Not enough, never enough for those who died, but something for those who remember. Shoup survived, carried Tarawa forever, became Commandant of the Marine Corps, never forgot that beach, never forgot those Marines, never forgot the cost. That shaped his later service, shaped his thinking, shaped his understanding of war, made him better leader, made him respect what combat costs, made him protective of Marines' lives. That's how some people process trauma, turn it into purpose, turn survival into mission, turn guilt into dedication. Shoup did that. Many couldn't. Everyone processed differently. No right way to handle Tarawa. Just survival, just getting through, just carrying it forever. The lessons from Tarawa reshaped amphibious doctrine. Reconnaissance became critical. Know the tides, know the reefs, know the defenses. Bombardment needed improvement, longer, heavier, more accurate. Tank support needed earlier, combined arms from the beginning. Communication needed improvement. Coordination between units, between services, between commanders. Logistics needed better planning. Medical evacuation needed improvement. Everything needed improvement. The Marines learned, applied lessons at next operations. Kwajalein, Saipan, Iwo Jima, Okinawa. Each assault improved. Each assault had better planning. Each assault had better support. Casualties still occurred. Fighting was still horrible. But Tarawa's lessons saved lives, made future operations more effective, made victory less costly. That's the positive legacy. The dead of Tarawa taught lessons that saved lives later. Their sacrifice wasn't wasted, was terrible, was traumatic, but taught lessons, changed doctrine, improved operations. That matters. Doesn't justify the cost. Nothing justifies that, but gives meaning, makes sacrifice contribute to something. That's all anyone can ask. The strategic value of Tarawa was limited. Small island, airfield was useful but not critical. Could have bypassed, could have isolated, could have let Japanese garrison rot. Why take it? Why accept those casualties? Questions asked then, asked now. Answers aren't satisfying. Needed to test amphibious doctrine, needed to learn lessons, needed to secure Gilbert Islands. All true, all rational, all strategic, none sufficient for mothers who lost sons, for wives who lost husbands, for children who lost fathers. Strategic necessity doesn't comfort the bereaved, doesn't make loss easier, just makes it official, makes it purposeful in abstract sense. But grief isn't abstract. Loss isn't strategic. Death is personal, permanent, painful. No amount of strategic justification changes that. Tarawa was strategically useful, was tactically educational, was personally devastating. All three are true. All three matter. Understanding all three is important. The Japanese perspective is worth considering. They fought brilliantly, defended expertly, used terrain and fortifications perfectly, inflicted maximum casualties, did everything doctrine demanded, lost anyway, because they were outnumbered, because Americans had more supplies, because determination can't overcome material disadvantage. The Japanese defenders knew they would die, accepted it, fought anyway. That's courage. Misguided strategy, terrible waste, but individual courage. Understanding this doesn't make them heroes. They were enemies. They killed Marines. They deserved defeat. But acknowledging their courage costs nothing. Recognizing their skill doesn't diminish Marine victory, just recognizes reality. The Japanese at Tarawa were skilled, determined, brave, also doomed. Both are true. Understanding both gives fuller picture. The public reaction to Tarawa was shock. Newsreels showed the carnage. Photos showed bodies. Americans saw the cost, asked whether it was worth it, asked whether island hopping required such casualties. Military assured public it was necessary, promised improvements, promised future operations would be better. Public accepted this, reluctantly, but accepted, because war demanded it, because victory required it, because alternatives were worse. That public support mattered, made continued operations possible, made funding available, made replacement troops willing to deploy. Without public support, war effort falters. Tarawa could have broken that support. Casualties were horrific, images were shocking, but explaining necessity, showing improvements, demonstrating lessons learned, all of that maintained support, allowed war to continue, allowed victory. That's another Tarawa legacy, teaching public the cost, maintaining support despite horror. That's democratic warfare. Public must understand, must accept, must support, even when the cost is terrible. If stories like Tarawa matter to you, If remembering these Marines matters, if understanding what they endured matters, subscribe to the Foxhole Chronicles. We tell forgotten stories every week. Stories about battles that cost everything. Stories about courage under impossible circumstances. Stories about Marines who refused to quit. Tarawa's story is one among many more coming. Subscribe and stay with us. Keep these memories alive together. This is Tarawa, 76 hours of hell on 291 acres, 1,009 Marines killed, 2,100 wounded, over 3,000 casualties, 4,500 Japanese dead, 17 captured, an entire garrison annihilated, an island soaked in blood, a coral reef that became a graveyard, a battle that taught the Marine Corps lessons bought in blood, that showed the cost of amphibious assault, that demonstrated courage under fire, that proved Marines would win regardless of cost. This is Pacific hell. This is what it took to cross 700 yards of water. This is what it cost to take one tiny island. This is Tarawa, forever remembered, forever honored, forever a symbol of Marine Corps determination and sacrifice. The 76 hours encompassed eternity for those who fought. Time became meaningless. Combat was continuous. Fear was constant. Death was everywhere. Marines who survived described time distortion. Hours felt like days. Days felt like years. The experience condensed and expanded simultaneously. Fighting felt endless, yet looking back seemed to pass instantly. That's how trauma affects perception, how combat warps time, how extreme stress changes memory. The 76 hours of Tarawa created memories that lasted lifetimes, created trauma that never healed, created bonds that never broke. Marines who fought together, survived together, grieved together. That shared experience was unique, incomprehensible to others, binding to those who lived it. Tarawa survivors could look at each other and know without words, know without explanation, know because they'd been there. That recognition was both comfort and curse, comfort in shared understanding, curse in shared trauma, both permanent, both defining, both part of who they were forever. The bodies in the lagoon became iconic image. Photos showed dozens of Marines floating in bloody water, dead where they fell, killed wading ashore. That image shocked America, showed the cost viscerally, made war real in ways statistics couldn't. Those bodies had names, had families, had lives before Tarawa, became casualties during Tarawa, became symbols after Tarawa, symbols of sacrifice, of courage, of cost. The families of those Marines saw those images, recognized equipment, wondered if their Marine was among the dead. Some were, some weren't. The uncertainty was torture. The knowledge was devastation. Either way, those images represented someone's son, someone's husband, someone's father, someone's loss. That made them powerful, made them meaningful, made them remembered. Those Marines died hard, died exposed, died helpless, but they're remembered. That's something. Not enough, never enough for those who died, but better than being forgotten. The lessons live on in modern amphibious doctrine. Every Marine learns Tarawa, learns what happened, learns what went wrong, learns what was fixed. That institutional memory shapes training, shapes planning, shapes operations. Modern amphibious assaults look different. Better intelligence, better bombardment, better coordination, better equipment. All trace back to Tarawa, to lessons learned, to improvements demanded, to changes implemented. That's how military learning works. Take casualties, analyze what happened, fix problems, apply solutions, pass knowledge forward. Tarawa's dead taught lessons. Those lessons save lives. Not enough to justify their deaths. Nothing justifies that, but gives meaning, makes sacrifice contribute, makes death teach. That's all anyone can ask, that their death meant something, changed something, improved something, made future Marines safer. Tarawa did that. That's its legacy. Horrible battle, terrible casualties, important lessons, all true, all permanent, all part of Marine Corps history. The 291 acres of Betio Island remain. The island is still there, inhabited now, different than 1943, but still there. The fortifications remain, concrete bunkers, gun positions, defensive works, all still visible, preserved partially, nature reclaiming partially, but evidence of the battle remains. Tourists visit, see the battlefield, try to imagine, can't really, can't understand what 76 hours of combat felt like, what waiting 700 yards under fire meant, what losing 1,000 Marines in 3 days cost. The battlefield is peaceful now, quiet, beautiful even, hard to imagine as hell, hard to picture as killing zone, hard to understand as the place 1,009 Marines died. But they did, right there, on that beach, in that lagoon, across those 291 acres. They fought, they died, they won. That ground remembers, should remember, must remember, because forgetting dishonors their sacrifice, forgetting wastes their deaths, remembering honors them, remembering learns from them, remembering makes their sacrifice meaningful. The 17 Japanese prisoners were unusual. Japanese soldiers rarely surrendered, preferred death, were trained that surrender was dishonor. Yet 17 survived, were captured, lived. Their stories are less known, less documented, less remembered. They were enemies. Their survival was reluctant, their capture often involuntary, wounded, unconscious, captured before they could resist. Most would have preferred death, preferred dying with comrades, but lived instead, carried that through their lives, carried guilt of survival, carried shame of capture, carried knowledge they'd failed their duty. That's their Tarawa, different from Marine Tarawa, but equally traumatic, equally permanent. War damages everyone, wounds everyone, even victors, even survivors. Nobody escapes unscathed. The 17 prisoners survived physically, were wounded psychologically, same as Marine survivors. Different cause, same effect. War's permanent mark on everyone it touches. The cemeteries holds the final evidence, rows of graves, white crosses, names, dates, evidence of those who died. Some were eventually brought home. Families requested return. Bodies were repatriated. Others remain, buried on Pacific islands, buried near where they fell, buried among comrades. Both choices honored the dead. Both gave families closure. Both marked sacrifice. The graves remain, maintained, honored, visited. Evidence that these Marines lived, that they fought, that they died, that they mattered. The graves don't convey who they were, don't show their personalities, don't reveal their dreams, just mark their sacrifice. That's what remains. Names, dates, evidence. The rest is memory, is family stories, is fading photographs, is increasingly distant past. But the graves remain, permanent, undeniable, proof of sacrifice, proof of service, proof of cost.
This is Tarawa's final truth. It was necessary. It was horrible. It was educational, all simultaneously. Necessary because strategic situation demanded island hopping. Horrible because casualties were enormous. Educational because lessons shaped future operations. Understanding all three is important. Denying any diminishes the others. Yes, it was necessary, but necessity doesn't eliminate horror. Yes, it was horrible, but horror doesn't negate necessity. Yes, it was educational, but learning doesn't justify casualties. All three coexist. All three matter. All three define Tarawa. The battle was successful. The casualties were catastrophic. The lessons were invaluable. Success doesn't erase casualties. Casualties don't negate success. Lessons don't justify either. They just are. All part of the same terrible, necessary, educational battle. That complexity is important. That nuance matters. That understanding honors everyone involved. Honors their courage. Honors their sacrifice. Honors their service. Honors what they accomplished. Honors what they endured. Honors what they taught. All of it, together, because that's what Tarawa was. All of it, together. Forever. 76 hours, 291 acres, 1,909 Marines dead, 2,100 wounded, 4,500 Japanese dead. These numbers define Tarawa, define its cost, define its scope. But numbers alone don't capture the reality, don't capture the courage, don't capture the horror, don't capture the determination, don't capture what it meant to wade 700 yards under fire, to assault concrete bunkers with rifles and grenades, to fight for 3 days without rest, to watch friends die, to survive when so many didn't. Numbers are important. Record the cost, provide evidence, enable comparison, but they're not the story. The story is individual Marines, individual moments, individual decisions to advance despite fear, to fight despite wounds, to continue despite losses. Those individual stories combine into the collective story. The story of Tarawa, the story of Pacific Hell, the story of 76 hours that taught the Marine Corps lessons they never forgot, that cost more than anyone wanted to pay, that accomplished what needed accomplishing. That's Tarawa, forever remembered, forever honored, forever Marine Corps history.